Have you ever felt a pull to leave everything you know behind for a promise of something greater? It's a terrifying thought, right? Well, today we are diving into the story of a man who did exactly that. His name was Abram, and he lived in a bustling, prosperous city called Ur. Imagine life is good, you're comfortable, you have your family, your friends, everything is familiar. Then, one day, you hear a voice, a divine call from God himself, saying, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to a land that I will show you." No map, no detailed plan, just pure, unadulterated trust. This is where the incredible journey of faith begins. So, Abram packs his bags. He, along with his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot, set out from Ur. They didn't know their final destination, only that God was leading them. They traveled for miles and miles, through deserts and foreign territories, until they finally arrived in a land called Canaan. It was here that God made a monumental promise to Abram. He said, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." Think about that for a second. Abram and Sarai were childless and getting on in years. The idea of becoming a great nation must have seemed impossible, yet Abram chose to believe. But the path of faith is rarely a smooth one. Soon after arriving in Canaan, a severe famine struck the land. The very place God had led them to could no longer sustain them. Faced with starvation, Abram made a difficult decision. They had to go down to Egypt to survive. This detour brought its own set of challenges and moral tests. In Egypt, fearing for his life, Abram asked Sarai to pretend she was his sister. It was a moment of fear and imperfect faith, showing us that even the greatest heroes of the Bible were human, just like us. They made mistakes, they had doubts, but they always returned to their path. After the famine ended, they returned to Canaan. Both Abram and his nephew Lot had become incredibly wealthy. Their herds of livestock were so large that the land couldn't support them both. Their herdsmen began to quarrel over grazing land and water sources. To keep the peace, Abram made a generous offer to Lot. He said, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me. The whole land is before you. Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot chose what he thought was the best land, the well-watered plains of the Jordan, near the city of Sodom, leaving Abram with the remaining territory. It was an act of humility and trust in God's provision. After Lot's departure, with Abram standing alone in the land, God spoke to him again. He didn't just speak, he painted a picture for him. He told Abram to look north, south, east, and west, for all the land he could see would be his and his descendants forever. And then came the most staggering part of the promise. God said, "I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted." Later, on a clear night, God took Abram outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your offspring be." Despite his old age and Sarai's barrenness, the scripture says Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Years passed, and the promise of a son remained unfulfilled. It was during this long wait that God reaffirmed his covenant in a profound way. He changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of many nations. This wasn't just a name change, it was a declaration of identity, a constant reminder of the destiny God had planned for him. His wife's name was also changed from Sarai to Sarah, meaning princess. God specifically promised that Sarah herself would bear a son. By this point, Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90. To them, and to everyone else, the idea was laughable. In fact, Sarah literally laughed to herself when she overheard it. But with God, the impossible becomes possible. Just as promised, Sarah conceived and gave birth to a son. They named him Isaac, which means he laughs, a beautiful and fitting name that captured their initial disbelief and ultimate joy. Isaac was the child of the promise, the long-awaited heir, the living, breathing proof of God's faithfulness. After decades of waiting, holding on to a promise that seemed to defy all logic, Abraham and Sarah finally held their miracle son in their arms. The laughter of doubt had been transformed into the laughter of pure, unadulterated joy. Their home, once silent, was now filled with the sounds of a new generation, the beginning of that great nation God had promised. You would think that after everything Abraham had been through, his trials were over. He had his heir, the covenant was secure. But God had one final, heart-wrenching test for him. Sometime later, God called out, "Abraham." And he replied, "Here I am." Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Can you even begin to imagine the agony of that command? To be asked to sacrifice the very son you waited a lifetime for, the child who embodied every promise God had ever made to you. It's a test that seems almost cruel in its intensity. Yet, the very next morning, Abraham got up, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his servants and his son Isaac, and set out for the place God had told him about. For 3 days, they traveled in what must have been agonizing silence. On the 3rd day, Abraham saw the place in the distance. He told his servants to wait while he and Isaac went to worship. As they walked, Isaac, in his innocence, asked, "Father, the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's reply is one of the most powerful statements of faith in all of Scripture. God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. When they reached the mountain, Abraham built an altar. He arranged the wood. Then, he bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. He reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. In that very moment, the angel of the Lord called out from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. This ultimate act of obedience solidified Abraham's legacy. He is remembered not as a perfect man, but as a man of profound faith who was willing to trust God completely, even when it made no sense, even when it cost him everything. His story isn't just an ancient tale. It's a powerful testament to the nature of faith, the faithfulness of God, and the idea that even in our darkest trials, God provides. Abraham's journey, from the city of Ur to the mountain of Moriah, shows us what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey today. If you found this story as moving as I do, please like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you in the next video.